Hello, this is Mark II, Senior Meteorologist, giving you a midwinter weather outlook for the winter 2018 and 19. When I gave my winter forecast back on October 27th, we talked about 5 ocean sea surface temperature sector drivers. And the biggest sector driver was the developing El Nino, and this was what was called a Modoki El Nino, where you had warming over the central Pacific and not as much in the eastern Pacific. And that controlled the weather, where it tended to give colder temperatures to the eastern southeast U.S. and warm temperatures to the Pacific Northwest and the West. The second key driver was the above normal sea surface temperatures in the northern Northeast Pacific Ocean. And once the jet stream gets going in, say, January and February, that allows a ridge to develop up into Alaska, which will deliver the cold air into the central and eastern U.S. The third driver is the below normal sea surface temperatures in the western Pacific and eastern Indian Ocean, and that tends to teleconnect with sinking motion here, rising motion here, sinking, and then troughiness in the east. The fourth area was the above normal sea surface temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico and up the east coast, which would energize nor'easters. And the final driver, which is not as important, but below normal sea surface temperatures south of Greenland and Iceland. So, based on those 5 sector drivers, I came up with analogs, and I came up with 7 Modoki El Nino cases with the same sector drivers. And those were the winters of 57, 58, 77, 78, 86, 87, the winter of 2002, 2003, 2004 and 5, 2009 and 10, and 2014 and 15. So the only way this forecast wouldn't work out is if the sea surface temperature drivers did not hold up. Well, Climate Prediction Center calculated the last 4 weeks, and those 5 sea surface temperature sectors are holding up. We have our Modoki El Nino, with most of the warming in the central and western Pacific, the cooling out in the eastern Indian Ocean, warming over the northeast Pacific, warming here and cooling here. So it's looking good. So the forecast should hold up. Based on that, those analog years provide forecasts that we can use. And those analog years said December would be near normal to maybe slightly above normal. And then January, and if I were to break it up into early January, late January, it would flip during the middle of January to becoming colder than normal. Not excessively in the east, but starting that trend. And then we go warm in the west. And then February is the coldest of the 3 months, with an overall winter surface temperature departure, cold in the east and in the Midwest and the middle U.S., and warm in the west. And I based on Dulles Airport, because that tends to represent where most people live, and those key years gave a below normal temperature of 2.7 degrees. Precip, using those analog years, wet up the east coast in the south and California in December. January continued that same wet theme. And February started becoming more normal in the mid-Atlantic, but even wetter in the southwest and California. So what does that produce for the 3 months added together? A very wet mid-Atlantic, wet in the south, wet in California, dry west of the Cascades, dry in the Great Lakes region, and a lot of the south, north of the Gulf Coast. So where are we standing for the first half of meteorological winter? Well, the first half of meteorological winter would go from December 1st through January 14th. And those would be, the second half would be basically January 15th to the end of February. So the first half of meteorological winter has been warm in the central and east and coolish in the west. In fact, Dulles has averaged about 2.8 degrees above normal for the first half of winter. But the question is, will we start turning colder? And the modeling showing that it's coming along real nicely with the analogs, and those sea surface temperature drivers are holding in place. So what are we seeing in the modeling? Here's the global ensemble forecast system of 21 ensemble members. And what's it showing? This is the jet stream. A 5-day mean or average of the jet, day 6 through 11, or January 21st through 26th. And we're seeing a big deep trough from the North Pole all the way down to Florida. And these blues mean colder than normal temperatures, colder than normal heights at the jet stream level. And that usually brings storminess and coolness in the east. And remember, I said that a key driver would be that warm sea surface temperature in the Gulf of Alaska. And look what's happening. We're getting a ridge developing. Why do we want a ridge there? Because that brings down the cold Arctic air into the interior of the eastern two-thirds of the U.S. Also, we have a trough east of Hawaii. And there's your El Nino bringing occasional storms and moisture into the cold air. But what we're lacking here is we need ridging over the top, and we're not seeing that yet. But if we go another day 11 to 16, which carries us January 26th to the end of the month, there's our ridge over the top. A banana high, locking in the very below normal heights, a very deep trough. We'll get probably the polar vortex coming down at least once during this time frame and many multiple periods afterwards. And with this ridge over the top, trough here, Hawaii, there's troughiness in Europe. This will lock in probably through early March to mid-March, where we'll be colder than normal temperatures and storminess. What's it produce on at the surface? This is the jet stream at 18,000 feet at the surface. January 20th to 25th, this model's saying Dulles will be 6.3 degrees below normal. So all these greens and purples are below normal. So that there, we're starting to see the flip in the temperature to the way the analogs showed. Let's go out to January 26th to 31st. It gets even colder. This purple is extreme cold. In fact, it's minus 16 degrees Celsius in parts of Iowa, northern Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. What does that convert into Fahrenheit? We're talking 30 degrees below normal for that 5 to 6 day period, the last week in January. 30 degrees Fahrenheit below normal during the climatological coldest part of the year. That means it's going to be very cold, and it could be dangerously so. So for Dulles, that time frame averages about 11 degrees below normal. So if we add up, looking at this, the climate forecast system CFS V2, if we look at the second half of January, it's saying Dulles will be 10 degrees below normal. If this model were to verify all the warmth, the 2 point whatever degrees above normal for the first half of winter, this much cold air for the second half of January will wipe out all that warmth, and the overall average for the winter will be just barely like a half degree below normal. What about February? February 2019, this model is saying Dulles will be minus 5.4 below normal for the month of February. The cold stays in, locked in, and giving us an overall below normal winter temperature. What about snow? Well, we've had 2 snowstorms in the Mid-Atlantic since November. And when we do a snowfall forecast, we include first flake to last flake. So the first storm happened where the D.C. area had 2 to 4 inches, and then northwest of the city, Frederick over to Martinsburg, had 6 to 8, and then up into south central PA had 8 to 12, and into Boston. If you zoom into the D.C. area, the place we're verifying is Dulles had 3 inches, and then here's your 6 to 8 northwest of the city. So it's a pretty significant storm that early in the year. Storm number two just happened this past weekend, where we had 8 to 12 around Cincinnati up to Springfield, parts of Ohio and southeast Indiana, and then another bullseye of 8 to 12 across the entire Washington, D.C. metro area into most of Baltimore. So this color shading is 8 to 12, and the yellow is 6 to 8. So two significant storms so far this winter. And here's the details of the D.C. area. At my house, we had 8 inches, and there's a picture of the snow on the deck at the end of the storm. But D.C. picked up, some places in D.C. had over 12 to 13 inches. Now, what are we expecting for the rest of the winter? Well, the European has a ensemble that calculates all its various members. I think it has 51 ensemble members, and it does an average, and it calculates the snowfall out to 46 days. So this snowfall map from the European goes from January 14th through March 1st, and it gives Dulles Airport 14 inches of snow on top of what we have already seen. And since this is ensemble, it's probably not a good estimate of what could really happen, but that's encouraging. And you can see the snow's coming well south. In fact, we have snow going to the Gulf Coast in this model. Not much. We're talking trace amounts up to less than a half inch. But this model is showing significant amount of snow. In fact, when you see parts of northern Pennsylvania and south central PA, that's over 2 feet of snow in this 46-day period. So a lot of snow heading our way. So the winter forecast for Dulles Airport was for below normal temperatures, and I gave an overall 1 to 3 degrees below normal. Said December will be near normal, but January and February below normal. From December 1st to January 15th, we are 2.82 above normal. But the modeling is turning much colder, and so did the analogs. So we're good there. The precip, we're doing fine. I gave a forecast of 9 to 12. As of January 14th, Dulles has picked up 6.89 inches, and that's almost 2.8 above normal. So we're doing really good in that forecast. What about snowfall? For Dulles, went above normal snowfall in the forecast, 30 to 45 inches. Normal's 22, last winter 11.9. Where are we at as of yesterday? 13.6 inches, and that's almost 7 inches above normal. So we're doing excellent on that forecast so far. So that is the end. If you have any questions, want kind of the rest of winter forecast for your area, let me know on my Facebook page. And hopefully you enjoyed this video.